welcome back to Coloring Through the Bible. My name is Keegan Harkins, and we are at the end of a year, the beginning of a new year. This is a time when we look back on last year and we reflect on the good times, the bad times. Maybe we make some resolutions. What did we do this last year that we don't want to do again? So we resolve to change, we resolve to do something differently, and we look forward to the future and we say, this is what I want to do. So this is a time when we do a lot of reflecting. Are we reflecting, though, on ourselves, on things that maybe don't need a second thought? Or are we reflecting on God? And I want to challenge us this year. We tend to, at the end of the year and the beginning of the new year, we tend to reflect on ourselves quite a bit. We make New Year's resolutions, we make plans, we make amends for what we did. Maybe we just plot, we plan, we scheme, we figure out what this next year is going to be all about. I tend to try to always put a theme to every year. This is going to be the year that. And, and you focus on that for maybe a month or two, and then life just goes like every other year. And then pretty soon you realize you're looking forward to next year, and you've kind of given up on this year. Like, I didn't make my resolution, so, that's next year's problem. I'll try again. But I want to kind of challenge us to do something maybe a little bit differently. Instead of reflecting on what we want to do differently this year, on what we wish we had done differently last year, I want us to just kind of stop, take control of those thoughts. And every time we think about last year and we maybe have regrets, or we look forward to this year and we have hopes and we have dreams, I want us to just choose to stop that way of thinking and choose to reflect on God. And if we resolve to do that all year long, I am willing to bet that this year will be a lot different than last year, because we can choose to think about all the things that are negative in our life, or all the things that maybe we've come short in, or all of the wishes and the dreams that we have, and we can get so caught up in thinking about those things that we miss what God's doing right now in the here and the now, and we miss an opportunity to trust Him for our future without asking a whole bunch of questions, without putting a whole list of demands on what we're hoping and waiting and trusting God for. Because I can do that. I can say, God, I'm trusting you for this, if you do it this way. Or could you just show me a sign that this is what you want me to do? It's not something that's uncommon. When Gideon was told that God wanted him to do something, his first response was, well, how do I know for sure? Maybe if I put this lamb skin out, if it's wet and everything else is dry, then I'll believe you. Or maybe if it's dry and everything else is wet, then I'll believe you. We tend to do that with God. We tend to say, I will trust you this year. I will step out in faith and do something new if you send somebody in my life to tell me this. Or if the next 3 lights turn green, I'll know that it's your will. Or I don't know, maybe I'm the only dork that does that, but I kind of have that moment that, like, that's the first thought that pops into my head. And then I have to stop myself. I have to choose to change my way of thinking to saying, God, no matter what, I'm going to trust you. And I don't have to know the future. We tend to sit here at the beginning of the year and we want to know the future. We want to know what's going to happen this year. But it doesn't matter what happens in February. It doesn't matter what happens in March. God is in control of today. He's in control of tomorrow, and He's in control of the future. And we need to have faith. And having faith isn't having a list of demands that God has to meet to show us that He really is in control. It's just saying, God, I trust you. Now, there's an example in the book of Psalms. David is a great example for this. One of the things that I love about a lot of the Psalms that he wrote is that he starts off complaining, and then he takes control of his thoughts and purposely changes what he thinks on. And then by the end of the Psalm, he's praising God because that purposeful decision to change what he's focusing on has changed his heart and his attitude. Psalm 77 is one of those Psalms, although there's quite a lot of them. It's why I love them so much, because I do that all the time. I can find myself thinking some negative thoughts, and that's easy to do at the end of a year, at the beginning of a new year. We tend to think about the things that we did wrong, or the things that didn't pan out the way we wanted to. We look at our shortcomings. That's what a New Year's resolution is, after all. We look at the things we want to change about ourselves, things we want to do differently. So we start off with this kind of negative thought about ourselves, about our situations, about what God's doing in our lives. But we need to stop that cycle right now. So in Psalm 77, right in the very beginning, in verse 2, he says, "When I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night I stretched out untiring hands, and my soul refused to be comforted." So here he's crying out to God, and he's refusing to be comforted. He wants absolutely nothing but God. Now, this psalm wasn't written by David, but it still has that same David kind of quality, because David did this a lot. I just really love this psalm. This is actually written by Aesop, but it's talking about him crying out to God. It's talking about him looking. And he says, "I remembered you, O God, and I groaned, I mused, and my spirit grew faint. You kept my eyes from closing. I was too troubled to speak. I thought about the former days of years long ago. I remembered my songs in the night, my heart musings, and my spirit inquired, will the Lord reject forever? Will he never show his favor again? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has God forgotten to be merciful?" You know, we can do that. We can be like Aesop, like David did many times, and we can focus on the things that maybe didn't go right this year. We can look back to all the times when we cried out to God and maybe we didn't get an answer, or maybe we got an answer we didn't want. And we can be so consumed with those negative thoughts, with those things that we wish we could do better, that we become frozen. I mean, Aesop is saying that he was in distress and sought the Lord all night long and refused to be comforted because he was thinking about the past. He was lamenting over the things that he wished he could change. And then he has a change of thought. In verse 11, he says, "I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. I will meditate on all of your works and consider all your mighty deeds." He made a decision to stop stressing over the past and then the things that were hard, the answers that weren't what he wanted, the times when he felt like he was far away from God. He made a decision to stop stressing about those things and to remember the good things that God had done. And what happens is when he remembers the good things, when he remembers the time that God came through, when things maybe didn't work out the way he wanted them to, but he can understand and he can see God's presence and his mercy and his love through even those hard times, then his eyes are open, his attitude changes, and he begins to start praising God, to start saying, "Your path led through the sea, your way through the mighty waters, though your footprints were not seen." He's saying, "You parted the waters. I didn't see you, but you were with me." And all of a sudden, his perspective on the struggles that he had gone through changes. And that's what we can do when we're thinking about the things that have happened this year or last year or in the past, which we tend to do at the end of a year. We can allow those things that didn't work out the way we wanted them to, or the things that were hard or painful, or the mistakes that we've made, we can allow them to deprive us of our joy, of our peace. But we can choose to stop thinking about those things in that negative way. And we can choose to remember all the miracles of God. We can remember how even in the lowest points of our life, God was with us. We can remember the blessings that were in the middle of the hard times. We can remember God's goodness and look forward to this new year with a hope and a trust that we can only have because we know that God has proved he's trustworthy. When we remember this last year, I want to challenge you to remember the blessings of this last year. And let the remembrance of those blessings, those times that God held us, those times that God showed us a way or sent us a friend or gave us a blessing, let those times encourage you for this next year. No matter what happens in 2018, God is by our side. So remember God's goodness so that you can face this next year with hope, with peace, but most importantly, with faith. Because the same God who brought you through everything in the past is waiting to get you through this next year too. I hope you guys have been encouraged. I hope you have a fabulous new year, a year that's just so full of God's love and mercy and grace that you can't help but smile next year when you think about what happened this year. I love you guys. Until we see each other again, have a truly blessed day and a happy new year.